Philadelphia is a city that knows how to hold a grudge against winter. The cold this season was personal. It came off the Delaware River with a raw, wet bite, slicing through the harbor district and creeping into the poorly insulated corridors of the public hospital. The smell of bleach and boiled coffee did nothing to mask the underlying scent of despair. This was my world. I am Ava Morales. I am 31 years old. My life is lived in the margins of other people's crises. By trade, I am a forensic linguist. I work part-time for the Public Institute, which means I dissect language for a living. I find the patterns, the hidden authors, the truth buried in threats or the lies tucked into fraudulent contracts. It is meticulous work, and it pays just enough to keep me anxious. The rest of my time, the part of my life that feels most real, is dedicated to my mother. She has kidney failure. Her world has shrunk to a dialysis chair and the four walls of our small apartment. We live frugally. Every dollar is a soldier sent to fight a battle we are losing. My contribution to the world, the one thing I have that feels abundant, is my blood. I am O negative, the universal donor. I give it as often as the clinic will let me. That morning, I had accepted a new freelance project. It felt like a clean win. A charity needed translation and analysis of procurement records for medical equipment. It was straightforward, something I could do while Mom slept. It was important to me. I have rules. I do not take jobs that carry the taint of ethical conflict. My principles are one of the few luxuries I can afford. The temptation, however, is constant. Just last week, an anonymous message had appeared on my encrypted app. Someone wanted me to soak test a few biomedical transport contracts. The fee they offered was obscene. $10,000. $10,000 is 3 months of my mother's specialized care, a down payment on peace of mind. But the language in the request was wrong. It was stilted, machine translated in parts, desperate to sound legitimate while screaming that it was not. I analyzed the syntax, even as I deleted the request. I refused. My integrity was not for sale. I was leaving the hospital late, pulling the collar of my thin coat tight against the freezing rain. My shift at the volunteer blood clinic was over. I was tired. I was heading toward the multi-story parking garage, the one where at least half the surveillance cameras were broken, just gray circles staring blankly at the decay. That was when the night tore open. It was not just a sound, it was a physical impact, a horrific grinding screech of metal, a percussive slam that vibrated through the soles of my shoes, and then a deep, guttural whoomph. The intersection outside the emergency bay lit up in a flash of orange. I did not think, I just ran. A high-end black sedan was wrapped around a steel traffic pole. The engine block was already a furnace, flames licking greedily at the passenger compartment. People were screaming. My hospital volunteer identification was still clipped to my jacket. The emergency room doors burst open, and the trauma team spilled onto the wet pavement. They were shouting, "He is trapped. The door is jammed. Get the jaws of life now." I got close enough to see him. The driver, he was a man, slumped over the steering wheel. The dashboard crushed into his chest. Fire was crawling along the firewall, starting to eat the upholstery. A young paramedic, her face pale with shock, was trying to find a vein. I cannot get a line. He is bleeding out. The pressure is too low. An older paramedic was on the other side, trying to apply pressure to a massive wound in the man's thigh. He looked up, his face a mask of grim calculation. He is losing too much, too fast. We need O negative. Right now. Get the transport bag." The first paramedic shook her head, tears of frustration in her eyes. "There is no time. He will not make it to the operating room. He needs it now." The words left my mouth before my brain could stop them. "I am O negative." They both turned. "I am O negative," I said again, louder, stepping into the light. "I just donated. I am clean. My paperwork is inside." The older paramedic did not waste a second. He did not ask for proof. He saw my badge. "Get her in the ambulance. Get a field transfusion kit. Move." They pushed me into the back of the ambulance. The sterile warmth, the shock after the icy rain. The noise of the jaws of life tearing at the car door was deafening. They could not move him. Not yet. So they ran the line from me to him. A doctor I did not recognize climbed in with me. He ripped open a sterile kit. "This is highly irregular, miss," he said, his voice tight. "Just do it," I said. He tied the tourniquet around my arm. I made a fist. The needle bit deep, a sharp, cold sting. I looked past the doctor through the open door of the ambulance. I watched my own blood, dark and warm, begin its journey down the clear plastic tube. It stretched across the wet, dark pavement, glistening under the flashing red and blue lights, and disappeared into the wreckage, into the arm of the man who was still trapped in the fire. I was 31 years old, and I was tethered to a dying stranger by a thread of my own life, watching him burn. Time warped. It felt like an hour, probably only a few minutes. The sawing of the metal, the hiss of the fire extinguishers, the frantic shouts. I felt the familiar lightheadedness of a donation. But this was different. This was raw. Then the man in the car moved. His head rolled back against the headrest. His eyes, dark and unfocused, seemed to find me, sitting in the bright light of the ambulance. His arm, the one they had the line in, twitched. His hand, covered in soot and his own blood, shot out and gripped the plastic tubing. "No, no," the doctor shouted, moving toward the door. "He will pull it out." The man pulled. His strength was shocking. His hand slid down the tube until it closed around my wrist, which was dangling off the edge of the gurney. His grip was steel. It was impossible. He was dying, but his grip was the strongest thing I had ever felt. I gasped. His eyes locked on mine. He saw me. He knew I was the source. His lips, cracked and bloody, moved. The sound that came out was a rasp, a low growl thick with an Italian-American accent that cut right through the chaos. "Do not call the cops." It was not a plea. It was a command. Then his eyes rolled back into his head, and his hand fell away from my arm. As it dropped, the sleeve of his charred jacket fell back. I saw it clearly, stark against the blood. A tattoo on the inside of his wrist, a falcon, its wings spread wide for the kill. I did not understand what it meant. Not then. They got him out. The jaws of life finally ripped the door from its hinges. They pulled him free, a mess of blood and torn fabric, and rushed him past me, onto a gurney and through the emergency room doors. The show was over. I sat there, shaking, a piece of white cotton taped to the crook of my arm. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving me freezing cold. That was when they arrived. 3 black sport utility vehicles. They did not park. They pulled up and stopped, blocking the ambulance bay completely, their engines idling like deep, angry growls. Men in expensive black suits emerged from all of them. They moved together, a silent, disciplined unit. They were not police. They were not hospital staff. They formed a perimeter around the emergency room entrance, pushing back the curious. One of them, an older man with silver hair and a face that looked carved from granite, walked to the paramedic I had spoken to. He spoke quietly. I could not hear the words, but I saw the paramedic, a man I knew was tough, nod quickly, his face pale. Then the man in the suit walked to me. He stood in the rain, looking into the back of the ambulance. He looked at my face, then down at the cotton ball taped to my arm. "You are the one." He said it was not a question. "He is family. We are his family." He reached inside his suit and pulled out a slim leather wallet, but he did not take out money. He produced a simple, heavy white card with just a name and a number. He did not offer it. "We need your name," he said. Ava Morales." "Ava Morales," he repeated, as if memorizing the sound of it. "We will ensure you are taken care of. We handle this from here. You understand?" I looked past him, standing by the lead vehicle, sheltered by the awning but separate from his men, was another man. He was tall and absolutely still, dressed in a simple, dark overcoat. He just watched. He seemed to be listening to the rain, to the engines, to the hospital itself. The men in suits kept glancing at him, their actions orbiting his stillness. He was a shadow that could think. Years later, I would know that name. Nico Santoro. He was the one giving the orders without ever raising his voice. I finally went home. I showered for a long time, trying to wash the smell of smoke and iron from my skin. I did not sleep. The next morning, the local news was calling it a miracle. A prominent local businessman, Luca Vitale, 37 years old, had survived a horrific, fiery crash. He was hailed as a pillar of the community, a logistics philanthropist. Luca Vitale. The name was a whisper in the city, one you heard in the harbor district but never saw in the society pages. I am a linguist. I trust data, not news reports. I sat down at my laptop, my fingers stiff, the spot on my arm aching. I ran his name. His logistics company was legitimate, but beneath it, I found another and another, a dense, tangled web of shell companies, registered in Delaware, registered in the Cayman Islands, all of them feeding back into that same logistics hub at the port. My blood turned cold, colder than the river. This was not just a businessman. This was the man they whispered about, the man whose name meant power, the man who owned the shadows. I had not just saved a man, I had saved the Vitale. And my blood, my O-negative blood, was now flowing through the veins of the city's most dangerous mafia boss. The hospital went silent on Luca Vitale. One day he was in critical condition. The next he had vanished from the patient roster. No discharge, no transfer, just gone. The nurses looked through me when I asked. 2 days later, the man named Nico Santoro found me. I was leaving my mother's apartment. He was just there, standing by the curb, the same still, dark overcoat, the same impression of a shadow that had learned to think. "Miss Morales," he said. His voice was quiet, polite. "Mr. Vitale requests the honor of thanking you personally. He is recovering well." "Tell him he is welcome," I said, my keys digging into my palm. "I do not need a personal thank you." "He insists," Nico said. "It was not a request. He is a man who values his debts. I did not give him a loan. I gave him blood. The debt is paid." I turned to walk away. "Please reconsider." His voice followed me, still quiet, but with a new weight. Philadelphia is a difficult city. It is good to have friends. I kept walking. That night, my phone woke me up. It was not a call. It just lit up, a system update notification. But I had not initiated an update. I went into the settings. New security protocols were active, things I did not recognize, carrier-level encryptions. My location services, which I always kept off, were enabled and locked. I was a linguist, not a technology expert, but I knew what this meant. I was not just being watched, I was being monitored. The cold anger was immediate. This was my life. This was my phone. I went to the police the next morning. I sat in a hard plastic chair and told a tired detective that I felt I was being stalked by the Vitale organization. He wrote exactly nothing down. "Miss Morales," he said, rubbing his eyes. "You saved Luca Vitale's life. The man is probably sending a fruit basket. You think his people are hacking your phone?" He leaned forward. "Let me give you some advice. You take the fruit basket. You say thank you. You go on with your life. You start inviting this kind of attention. You are going to get it. Do you understand me?" I understood him perfectly. I left. I was on my own. 3 days later, I came home from a late consult. The door to apartment 3B, the one directly across the hall from mine, was splintered. The frame was broken. Yellow police tape was already up. My neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, was standing in the hallway crying. "Ava, thank God," she said, grabbing my arm. "They broke in. They thought it was your apartment." "What?" "They got the numbers mixed up. The man, he kicked in the door. He had gloves. He kept shouting, 'Where is she? Where is the blood?' He was not looking for money. Ava. He went right for my desk, scattering my papers, shouting, 'Ava, Ava.' I hid in the bathroom. He was looking for you. He was not looking for me. He was looking for the donor. He was looking for the name of the person with O-negative blood. The message was not for Mrs. Petrov. It was for Luca Vitale, and it was signed in my terror. Nico Santoro's black sport utility vehicle was at the curb before the police had even finished dusting for prints. This time, he did not wait for me. He met me in the hallway. "This," he said, his gaze fixed on the broken door, "is what he was trying to prevent. He will not allow this to get closer to you. You will come with me now." This time, I went. The club was called Aria. The facade was all old-world Philadelphia brick and polished brass, impossibly discreet. The inside was wealth, dark wood, low light, the scent of expensive bourbon and something floral. It was a fortress, disguised as an indulgence. Nico did not take me to the main floor. He led me to a private elevator, which descended into a basement that looked nothing like a basement. It was a command center. Banks of monitors, maps, men and women speaking quietly into headsets. And sitting in a deep leather armchair, a glass of water in his hand, was Luca Vitale. He looked nothing like the dying man in the car. He was 37 years old, they said. He looked it. He was wearing a simple dark sweater, his arm in a sling. The only sign of the crash was a network of healing burns along his jawline, but his eyes were the same, dark, intense, and utterly in command. He dismissed Nico with a nod. He stood, a slight wince of pain, but he did it. "Miss Morales, Ava, thank you for coming. I did not have a choice." He almost smiled. "You always have a choice. Sometimes they are just harder to see." He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Please." I remained standing. "Your people hacked my phone. Someone broke into my neighbor's apartment looking for me." "They were not my people," he said. his voice dropping, the accent I remembered from the crash, that Italian-American cadence, now clear and controlled. They were his, the man who did this to me. And he found you because I did not protect you fast enough. That will not happen again. I do not want your protection. You already have it, he said, and the words were quiet, but they landed like stones. You are under my care now, Ava. My blood is your blood. He tapped his own chest. No, that is not right. Is it your blood is my blood? It is in me. It saved me. I will not let anyone harm the person who did that. The possessiveness of it, the absolute ownership in his tone made my skin crawl. I am not one of your assets, Mr. Vitale. My blood was a donation, not a contract. It was a bond, he said, his eyes holding mine. And I honor my bonds. You and your mother. You will be safe. I saw the opening. This was not a negotiation, but I am a linguist. I know that all conversation is a negotiation. If I accept this, I said, my voice shaking slightly, I have rules, my rules. He looked surprised. He was not used to rules. I will not be around violence, I said, my voice hardening. You will not bring it to my door. You will not bring it near me. And you will never, ever touch my family. My mother is off limits. If I see it, if I even smell it, I go back to the police. I go to the newspapers. I do not care what happens. He studied me for a long time. You have courage, Ava. I admire that. He nodded. No violence near you or your mother. You have my word. You will have my protection until the man responsible for the accident is found. Then you are free to go. It was not an accident. The words just hung in the air. I had heard it. In the elevator, on the way down, 2 of his men had been talking. They had not seen me. They thought I was just some girl. The brakes were tampered. Someone on the inside sold the route. I had also heard a name. Rossi, at the port. Luca's face did not change, but the air in the room went from cold to arctic. He looked at me, really looked at me, as if seeing a weapon he had not known he possessed. Your skills, he said slowly. The linguistics, that is what you do. Yes. He walked to a desk and picked up a thick folder. He tossed it onto the table in front of me. My associates believe these are legitimate medical transport contracts. I do not. I opened the folder. It was dense with shipping manifests, insurance riders, and procurement forms, all for biomedical supplies. Look at them, he commanded. I did. It took me 10 minutes. The errors were screaming at me. This is not legitimate, I said. It is a fraud, a bad one. Show me. I pulled out a page. Here, the phrasing. The refrigerated unit will maintain temperature for the goods inside. It is machine translated. A native English speaker would say, for the contents or for the cargo. And here, the delivery authentication is a necessity requirement. That is redundant. It is a common error from a native speaker of a Romance language, trying to sound overly formal. I flipped through more pages. The sentence structures are all identical. Subject, verb, object, no complexity. It is an attempt to sound sterile and legal, but it just sounds hollow. And the metadata on the file properties. It has all been scrubbed, but the template name is BioDraft V2 AC. A real logistics company would have a coded, specific file naming convention, not something so generic. What does it mean, he asked, his eyes sharp. It means, I said, my own pulse quickening as I saw the full picture, that these are not contracts. They are templates. They are shells. They are designed to look real to a customs agent who is not paying attention, but they are hollow. You are not shipping medical supplies. You are using this language to create a paper trail for something else. Rare blood, he said, finishing my thought. And specialty pharmaceuticals, off-market, into and out of the East Coast. I stared at him. This was the business. This was the real logistics. You found that in 10 minutes, he said. It was not a compliment. It was an assessment. My best people missed it for 6 months. I felt a strange, cold thrill mixed with my fear. He was not just protecting me. He was using me. The days that followed were a blur of surreal contradiction. A black car, driven by a man who never spoke, took me to my mother's dialysis appointments. I sat in the waiting room, analyzing Luca Vitali's fraudulent shipping contracts, while my mother, inside, was suddenly treated like royalty. When I went to see her, she was glowing. Ava, it is a miracle. They got me into the new wing. The chair is heated. Honey and Dr. Samuels, the head of nephrology. He saw me himself. He said they had a cancellation, a benefactor. Oh, Ava, it feels so good. I think my energy is coming back. I knew it was not a cancellation. I knew who the benefactor was. I felt sick with anger and shamefully, with relief. He had honored his word. He had not touched her, but he had wrapped her in his protection, in his power. I was furious at the control, and I was weeping with gratitude that my mother was comfortable for the first time in years. Luca Vitandi first. We existed in this strange space between his gratitude and his control. He was fascinated by me. I was a problem he could not solve with money or violence. I did not fear his power, and it confounded him. He would ask me about my work, and I would find myself explaining the nuances of authorial voice, how I could find a person's fingerprint in their syntax, and I, in turn, was drawn to a part of him I had no right to see. The man who had organized my mother's care was not the man who ran a criminal enterprise. Or perhaps he was. Perhaps that was the most dangerous part of all. One night, while working on the original charity files I had taken on, the ones for the medical equipment, a name jumped out at me, a holding company. V Logistics Import. It was listed as a third-party freight forwarder. I ran it against the shell companies from Luca's folder. It was not just interwoven. It was the hub, the charity I was working for, the one I had taken because it was ethically clean, was the central washer for the entire biomedical smuggling operation. Someone had not just tried to use me as a legal cover. They had succeeded. They had planted that job with me, knowing my reputation, knowing I was clean. I was the alibi. I felt the blood drain from my face. My principles, my one luxury, had been a tool. I looked at my phone, at the lock security settings. I thought of the man in the car, his hand on my wrist. I thought of my mother, sleeping peacefully in a benefactor's heated chair. I was not on the outside. I was not even on the periphery. I was in the network, and my own blood was the link. The first public attack was not with a bullet, but with a blog post. It was a smear piece, published by a small, aggressive online news outlet known for its anonymous sources and righteous indignation. The article hinted that a linguistics expert, Ava Morales, had suddenly become the inseparable companion of the recently hospitalized Luca Vitale. It suggested I was using this new, intimate relationship to influence hospital contracts, steering them toward Vitali's logistics companies, my freelance work with the charity, The one I now knew was a front, was painted as the mechanism of my corruption. It was brilliant. It was devastating. It did not just attack me, it attacked my credibility, the only professional currency I had. Within 24 hours, my public institute contract was put under review. The small university where I sometimes guest lectured canceled my upcoming seminar. My name, the one I had worked so hard to keep clean, was now associated with mafia mistress and contract rigging. I was furious. I felt the hot, sick shame of being defined by a lie. I called Nico, my voice shaking with rage. "It is over," I said. "This is what your protection looks like. I am done. You stay away from me. You stay away from my mother. I will take my chances." I hung up. I shut off my phone, the one they were monitoring. I took the battery out. I sat in my apartment, the silence suddenly deafening. I had cut the cord. For the first time in weeks, I was truly alone, and I was terrified. The terror lasted for exactly 6 hours. Then there was a knock. Not a violent knock, just a patient, persistent rap. I looked through the peephole. It was Nico. He was alone. "Ava," he said, his voice muffled by the door. "Open the door. I am not here to force you. I am here to show you something." I did not move. "He respects your wish," Nico said. "He has pulled the security. You are free, but you are not safe. Let me show you why. Then I will leave." I unlocked the door. He stood in the hallway, holding a tablet. He did not try to come in. He simply handed it to me. "Watch this," he said. It was a video, raw surveillance footage, time-stamped 3 days prior. It showed a man in a sharp suit entering a sleek, modern office building. He was smiling, shaking hands, his arm slung familiarly around another man. The man he was embracing was the editor of the blog that had just destroyed me. "I do not know who that is," I said. "That," Nico said, his voice flat, "is Marco De Laurentiis." The name meant nothing to me. "He is Luca's captain for the South Docks," Nico explained, as if discussing the weather. They grew up together, blood brothers. They called each other, "Marco is the one who cut Luca's brakes. Marco is the one who wants the biomedical corridor. He wants it to be a gold mine, and Luca is in his way." My mind flashed back to the name I had overheard. Rossi. "He is working with Rossi at the port." Nico's expression tightened. "Yes, and with the Gulf Syndicate, he is bringing in outside partners, dirty cops. He wants to take everything." He pointed to the screen. "That media company. Marco owns 40% of it. This was not a random attack. Ava, it was a strategic move. He could not find you, so he flushed you out. He made you a target, so Luca would be forced to react." I felt the blood drain from my face. "He used me." "He used your name," Nico corrected me. "To see what Luca would do. To see if you mattered." He held out his hand for the tablet. "He knows you do. Now he will come for you." I gave him the tablet. I felt the cold realization seep into my bones. I could not go back. My old life was gone. It had been erased by a man with a smile like a knife. "What does Luca want?" I whispered. "He wants you safe," Nico said. "Club Aria. It is the only place he can guarantee it. The choice is yours, but I would make it now." I moved into a guest suite in Aria that night. It was a beautiful cage, all soft lighting and silent, thick carpets. The winter storm hit 2 days later. It was a monster, a true blizzard that shut down Philadelphia. The wind howled against the reinforced windows of the club. Even in the converted bunker of the basement, I could feel the city grinding to a halt. That was when the attack came. They used the storm as cover. They came through a service tunnel, the one I did not even know existed. Alarms blared, a sound I had never heard in that silent fortress. The sound of gunfire was close, contained, a series and dry, flat pops. Nico and 2 other men burst into my room. "Stay here. Do not move," Nico commanded. He shoved a heavy-bodied man inside with me, a bodyguard I barely knew. "Protect her," Nico ordered. And then he was gone, his gun drawn. The bodyguard, he could not have been more than 20, pushed me into the corner, away from the door. He was terrified, his hand shaking. "It is okay, miss," he said, his voice cracking. "They will not get in." We heard shouting, then a blast that shook the walls. The door to the suite splintered. A man in black tactical gear, not one of Luca's, stepped in, his weapon raised. The young bodyguard did exactly what he was trained to do. He stepped in front of me. He fired his own weapon. The other man fired back. The sound in the small room was deafening. A physical blow. The attacker fell backward into the hall. The bodyguard slumped against the wall, then slid to the floor. "I am hit," he whispered, his face a mask of shock. I ran to him. He had his hand pressed high on his thigh, but the blood was not just seeping. It was pulsing, a dark, rhythmic spray. "God," he whispered, "I cannot stop it." The femoral artery. I knew what I was looking for. I ripped my own scarf from my neck. "Press down, hard," I yelled. I wrapped the scarf around his thigh, high up, and grabbed a heavy glass lamp from the side table. I put it against the scarf and twisted, creating a makeshift tourniquet. The bleeding slowed from a spray to a fast ooze. "Nico!" I screamed, pulling the door open. The hallway was full of smoke. Nico was there in a second, his face grim. "He is bleeding out," I said, my voice high. "He needs a surgeon. He needs blood. Now." We got him to the wine cellar. It was the most secure room, deep in the sub-basement. Luca was already there, his arm out of the sling, a pistol on the table next to him. His face was a thundercloud. "How bad?" he asked. I said, my hands covered in the kid's blood. "Nico, what is his blood type?" Nico already knew. "Oh, negative. Same as you." I looked at Luca. His eyes met mine. He knew what I was going to say. "There is no ambulance in this storm." I said, "No hospital. He will not last 20 minutes. Get me a kit, the same one they used for you." Luca stared at me. He looked at my face, at my hands, at the dying man on his priceless floor. He seemed to be looking at something else entirely, something broken in the world that I was, for a moment, holding together. He did not see a victim. He saw a solution. He nodded. "Once, get her the kit. For the second time in my life, I gave blood to save a man in a crisis. This time, I was in a wine cellar that smelled of dust and old grapes, the sound of a blizzard and distant, finished gunfire outside. I held the young man's hand. He was just a boy. I watched my blood flow into him, and I felt the familiar, cold drain. Luca never took his eyes off me. He watched me with a raw, unsettling intensity, as if I were a piece of human decency he had forgotten existed. The boy lived. The attack was repelled. Marco had lost, but he had made his point. He could get inside. The next day, the silence in the club was heavier. I was not a guest. I was a resource. Luca brought me the contracts again. The real ones, the ones he had taken from Rossi's office after a visit I was not supposed to know about. "Find him. Ava," he said. "Find the one on the inside. Find the one who sold my rote. Find the one who let them in." I worked for 2 days. I barely slept. I was not just looking for linguistic tics this time. I was looking for a ghost. The contracts were a mess of different authors, but the final drafts, the ones that were executed, they all had a similar polish. "It is 2 people," I told him, spreading the papers out on the massive oak table in his office. "One person writes the base, probably this Rossi. His language is sloppy, full of port slang, but someone else cleans it, someone educated." I pointed to a clause. "See, the consignment's integrity is contingent upon. That is formal, but the original draft I found said if the stuff is good. It is the same hand every time. One author, one proofreader." "Who?" Luca asked. "The proofreader is the key," I said. "He or she is the one who understands the entire operation. They are the one who knows how to make it invisible." I went to the digital files. The digital signature on the final approval. It is not Rossi. It is firewalled, but the routing code is internal. It comes from your accounting department. Luca's face hardened. "My accountant." "Your chief accountant," I said, my stomach twisting. I pulled up the employee file. The signatures all trace back to this terminal, Elena Carbone. The name landed in the room and exploded. I saw it on Luca's face. This was not a soldier. This was not a captain. Nico, who had been standing by the door, swore, a low, vicious sound. "Elena, it is not possible. She has been with you for 12 years. Her family." "She was with me," Luca said, his voice flat, all emotion drained from it. I saw the look that passed between them. I was a linguist. I read the subtext. "She was your lover," I said. It was not a question. Luca looked at me, his eyes cold. "That was a long time ago." "She is the one," I insisted, pushing the data forward. "The linguistic fingerprint is hers. She is meticulous. She is smart. She is the one who cleaned the language, who hid the fraud. She is the one who sold you out." The air was thick with betrayal. Elena Carbone, trusted, brilliant, and a traitor. They brought her in. She was beautiful, poised, with eyes that held a deep, old sadness. She did not look at Luca. She looked at me. It was a look of pure, unadulterated condemnation, as if I was the one who had brought this all crashing down, as if I was the one who had taken her place. "Why?" Luca's voice was quiet, but it was the quiet of a bomb before it detonates. Elena's composure broke. She started to weep, silent, hard tears. "He has my brother," she whispered. "Marco, he found out what my brother did in Miami. He has been blackmailing me for 6 months. He said he would send him to the Gulf Syndicate. They would kill him." She was a double agent, trapped by a secret I could not even guess at. The moral knot tightened until I could not breathe. She was a victim, and she was a perpetrator. She had helped Marco try to kill Luca. She had put us all in danger. Luca turned his back to her. I could see the muscles in his jaw working. He was deciding her fate. In his world, there was only one punishment for this. "Do not," I said, stepping forward. Luca turned to me, his eyes blazing. "She betrayed the family." "She was blackmailed," I countered. "She is a witness. She is not your enemy. She is the key to flipping this, to taking him down, not just your way, but the legal way, the way that sticks." "Witness," Protection. Luca laughed, a cold, harsh sound. You think that will work? Try it, I said, challenging him. You want to end this, use her, protect her brother, get her to testify against Marco. Use her knowledge, not just your guns. This is the choice. Luca, the old way, or a new one. He stared at me, his face unreadable. He was caught between a lifetime of violence and this new, strange path I was offering. He looked at Elena, his face full of a complex pain. Right, he said, his voice raw. We do it your way, Ava. We try to protect her. We use her to flip Marco. It was the first time he had ever chosen a path that was not soaked in blood. The relief in the room was so thick I could taste it. Elena was still crying, but now it was a different kind of cry. It lasted until my phone rang. Not the burner phone Nico had given me. My old phone, the one I had taken the battery out of. I had put it back in that morning, hoping for a text from my mother. The number was blocked. I picked it up. Hello? The voice on the other end was smooth, almost friendly, with the same dockside accent as Rossi, but polished. Ava Morales, the angel of mercy. I froze. Luca and Nico tensed, watching me. This is Marco De Laurentiis, the voice said, as if introducing himself at a party. I hear you have been busy, fixing my contracts, giving my blood brother new ideas. What do you want? Well, what is mine? He said, his voice turning hard and cold. I just wanted to call you. I wanted you to know that blood you gave him, that blood that is keeping him alive. It is a precious resource, and I am coming to collect the rest. The line went dead. I looked at Luca. He did not have to ask. He knew. I was not just leverage. I was the target. He wants the biomedical corridor, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the oppressive silence in the bunker. Luca, Nico, and a now deathly pale Elena Carbone all looked at me. He wants those contracts, so let us give them to him. Luca's eyes narrowed. Ava. A fake shipment. I pushed on, the plan forming in my head, born of linguistic traps and desperation. We create a new set of contracts. We use Elena's access, her codes. We leak them to Marco. We make it look like the largest shipment of rare biologics and off-market pharmaceuticals he has ever seen. Something the Gulf Syndicate would kill for. A trap, Nico said, his voice a low rumble. More than a trap, I said, looking at him. Your men can set up surveillance. That is your part. My part is the data. I tapped the folder in front of me. I will write these new contracts, and inside them, I will embed a linguistic watermark, a specific, deliberately flawed phrase. The biologicals necessitate preservation protocol, Alpha 7. It sounds complex, but it is grammatically redundant. It is a ghost. It is my signature. When Marco takes those files and sends them up his new supply chain, he will be flagging himself to any federal analyst who looks at them. He will be confessing in my language. Lucas stared at me, a long, calculating look. He would have to verify the shipment in person. He would not trust just the data. Pier 14, Nico said instantly. The old cold storage warehouse. It is isolated. The scanners there are offline. If he wants to move a shipment that large without appearing on the official manifest, he has to use that pier. We set it for a night with no container ships scheduled. Luca nodded. A slow, grim finality. We do it. Later, after Luca and Nico had left to mobilize their people, I sat with Elena. She was huddled in a chair, a ghost of the composed woman she had been. "I will do it," she whispered, her hands trembling. "I will give you all of it, the private server addresses, the syndicate's routing codes, everything Marco uses." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a terrible, pleading light. "But he will kill him. My brother, he is not like them. Ava, he is just weak. He made a mistake. Marco has him in a safe house near the port. The second I authorize those codes, Marco will know I betrayed him. He will have my brother killed. Luca will—" I started. "Luca will not," she hissed, a sudden flash of her old fire. "Luca will trade. He will see him as leverage. This is not his world. Ava, you do not understand. You have to promise me. You, not him. Promise me you will make them save my brother." I looked at this woman, this traitor, this victim. She had tried to have Luca killed. She had put me in the line of fire, and she was right. I looked at her, and I made a choice. "I promise," I said. The words tasted like ash. I knew, even as I said it, that this promise was a stone I would carry, one that would never let me go. The night of the meet, Pier 14 was a cathedral of cold shadows. The air was frigid, tasting of salt and diesel. It was so quiet I could hear the lap of the filthy water against the pylons. Nico had his men hidden in the catwalks. Snipers I could not see. I knew they were there. I could feel their invisible presence. I was in the main cold storage unit. It was massive, a warehouse of frozen goods. Elena was at a terminal, her fingers flying, activating the fake contract and the shipment locator. Luca was with me. He was not wearing a suit. He was dressed for war, a heavy coat, a weapon holstered discreetly beneath it. "I want him alive, Nico," he said, his voice a low command into his earpiece. "Do you understand me? I want him to answer for this." My heart was a fist beating against my ribs. I am a linguist. I analyze text. I was standing in a freezer, acting as bait in a mafia war. We did not have to wait long. Headlights sliced through the darkness of the pier. Not one car, 3 heavy sport utility vehicles. They pulled up, and men spilled out. At least 10 of them. They were not just dock workers. They were wearing tactical gear, carrying weapons that were not for show. Gulf Syndicate. Marco De Laurentiis stepped out of the lead vehicle. He wore a long cashmere coat, and he was smiling. He walked into the warehouse as if he owned it. "Brother," he called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous, cold space. "You look well, recovered." He saw me, and his smile widened. It was a terrible, sharp thing. "And you brought the girl. Is she the down payment?" "It is over, Marco," Lucas said, his voice flat and dead. "Your people are gone. Elena talked. The Federals have the data." Marco laughed. It was a full, rich sound, completely without humor. Elena was just a key, Luca, a tool. You always were sentimental." He looked around, at the crates, at the ceiling. "You set a good trap, but you forgot who you are dealing with." He raised his hand. In it was a small, black remote. "This is a cold storage facility, Luca, but it is also a thermal trap for flash defrosting. It is amazing what you can build when no one is watching." He pressed the button. It was not an explosion. It was a roar, a deafening hiss as every cooling unit in the warehouse slammed into reverse. Heavy steel doors I had not even seen slammed shut, sealing the loading bay. Red lights flashed, alarms blared, and heat, a suffocating, dense wave of it, began to pour from the ceiling vents. It will be 120 degrees in here in 10 minutes. Marco's voice echoed over an intercom system. He was outside. He had sealed us in. A steam oven. Goodbye, brother. Send my regards to Elena. The temperature rose instantly. The frost on the walls vanished. The air became thick, wet, and unbreathable. He locked us in, Elena screamed, clawing at the steel door. He was never going to save my brother. He was lying. Luca and Nico were firing at the door, but the bullets just sparked and whined off the reinforced steel. We were trapped. "The shelves!" I yelled, my mind racing. The heat was making me dizzy. I looked at the cargo. It is not just food. It is biomedical. Look. I ran to a row of gleaming, insulated tanks. The labels were clear. Cryogenic storage, liquid nitrogen. "Elena, help me." She stared at me, her face slick with sweat and tears. "What?" "Push." We threw our weight against one of the wheeled tanks. It was impossibly heavy. Luca, seeing what I was doing, ran to help. He and I shoved the massive tank, its wheels screaming, toward the main heating vent in the floor. "Ava, what are you doing?" Luca yelled over the sound of the heaters. "A countermeasure," I shouted. "It is basic thermodynamics." I found the main release valve. It was frozen solid. I smashed it with a fire extinguisher. Nothing. Luca put his hand over mine. Together, we put our entire weight on the lever. It broke free. A plume of pure liquid nitrogen, a blinding white cloud, erupted from the tank. It hit the superheated steam from the vents. The sound was a physical blow, a sudden, deafening compression of air. The warehouse instantly vanished in a thick, choking fog. The temperature plummeted 20 degrees in seconds. We were blind. "Ah, I cannot breathe," Elena shrieked. "Stay low," I yelled. The fog was disorienting. We were all coughing, but we were hidden. We were near the main conveyor belt, the one used for loading. I grabbed a metal bar from a nearby toolbox. I began to strike the steel frame of the belt. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Over and over. SOS. It was a linguistic trick. Not words, but rhythm, pattern. I was praying that Nico's men outside this oven, the ones who were monitoring, would hear the audio code over the alarms. We heard it, a massive explosion from outside. The door. They were blowing the door. But Marco's men were still out there. We heard the sharp crack of gunfire, a full-on battle erupting on the pier. The warehouse groaned. The violent, sudden shifts in temperature had compromised the structural integrity. Above me, a metal catwalk, heavy with ice and machinery, shrieked. Nico saw it. He was moving toward me and Elena, pushing us toward the sound of the explosion. Go now to the door. It fell, a massive steel I-beam, tearing free from the ceiling, crashing down right where I had been standing. Nico shoved me, hard. I went flying, skidding on the now slushy, icy floor. He was not fast enough for himself. The beam did not hit him directly, but it glanced off the wall and crashed onto his shoulder, pinning him against a shelf. He roared, a sound of pure agony. The door burst open. It was not a rescue. It was a war zone. Fire and smoke and men shouting. Luca was torn. He looked at Nico, trapped and bleeding. He looked at me, struggling to get up. Through the smoke, I could see him, Marco. He was at the edge of the pier, his men covering his retreat. Luca made his choice. He ran to me. He grabbed me by the arm, hauling me to my feet. "Get him," he roared at his 2 remaining men, pointing at Nico. He grabbed Eliana and shoved us both through the mangled doorway, out into the freezing night air. We stumbled onto the pier. Sirens were screaming, coming from every direction. The entire port was lit up. I saw Marco. He was on a speedboat, the engine already churning the dark water. He was pulling away. He saw me. He saw Luca framed in the smoking doorway. He did not shoot. He did not yell. He just looked at me. He smiled. He slowly, deliberately, tapped his own chest, right over his heart. Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness. The aftermath was chaos. Federal agents, police, the Port Authority, they swarmed the pier. Nico's men got him out. He was alive, but his arm was shattered. We could not go back to Aria. Luca made a call, his voice rough. Shut it down. Shut it all down. Get everyone clean. The club was closed. The bunker was compromised. I stood there, wrapped in a paramedic's blanket, shaking so hard I thought my teeth would crack. My old life, my apartment, my job at the institute, it was gone. It was all gone. I was standing at a crime scene. I was a person of interest in a federal investigation. Luca came to stand beside me. His face was black with soot and a rage so deep it was silent. He was watching the ambulance carry Nico away. I do not know why I asked, maybe because I had to know. My voice was a shredded whisper. If you had to choose, I said, my teeth chattering. Back there, if you could only save one, between me and your family, between me and him. I nodded at the retreating ambulance. He was silent for a long time, watching the red lights disappear. He turned to me. His eyes were dark, still burning with the fire and the ice from the warehouse. I will not choose, he said, his voice raw. That is the old way. That is Marco's way. I will not choose. I will change the rules. We were ghosts. After the battle at Pier 14, Luca dissolved his footprint. We moved to an anonymous glass tower in Center City, a corporate apartment leased under a shell company so clean it squeaked. Club Aria was dark, listed as closed for renovations. Nico was recovering, his arm and shoulder rebuilt with steel plates, a permanent, painful reminder of his loyalty. The federal investigation was a predictable mess. They had shell casings, a warehouse full of melted cryo-tanks, and rumors. They had nothing concrete. I had the truth. While Luca and Nico healed and reorganized, I went to war. I sat in that sterile apartment for 3 days, fueled by coffee and a cold, precise rage. I took all of it, the original charity contracts, the fraudulent biomedical manifests, Elena's notes, and the linguistic watermark I had planted. Biologicals necessitate preservation protocol, Alpha 7. I wove them together. It was a tapestry of crime, told through syntax. I showed how Marco's crude, portside language was filtered through Elena's educated, precise legal phrasing. I showed how my own watermark, the ghost phrase, was the final link, the one Marco had personally approved and forwarded to the Gulf Syndicate's logistics front. I had his linguistic fingerprint. I had the whole chain of command. I called it the blood dossier. I needed a publisher, not a cop. I reached out to a man I had worked with once, an old-school investigative reporter named Ben Carter. He was one of the few left who valued truth over clicks. We met in the rare books room of the public library, a place so quiet it felt holy. He read the file, his face growing paler with every page. Ava, he said, closing the folder. This is a mafia war. You are handing me a knife, and pointing me at Marco de Laurentiis. "He will end me. My paper will not touch it." "Oh, you are wrong," I said, my voice low. "This is not a mafia story. This is a public health crisis. This is about stolen pharmaceuticals. This is about rare blood types being diverted from hospitals. Look at the shipping manifests. Those are real patients. Ben, those are real people whose treatments are being sold to the highest bidder. This is not about them." I pointed to the cover. "This is about the victims. You can publish all of it. But I have one condition. You will not print a single patient's name. You will redact every victim's file. You protect the innocent. You expose the parasites. You tell the real story." He looked at me for a long time. He nodded. The blood dossier, God help us all. The story broke on a Tuesday. It was a digital atom bomb. The blood money pipeline, how Philadelphia's most vulnerable are exploited by criminal syndicate. It was all there. My linguistic analysis, the link between Marco, the port, and the Gulf Syndicate. The city was in an uproar. The mayor's office called for a federal task force. The hospital boards were in emergency sessions. I had done it. I had used my words, and they had struck harder than any bullet. Luca was watching the news report on a massive television when I got back. He looked at me, and his expression was something I had never seen before. It was not gratitude. It was awe. "You did it, Ava," he said. "You bled him dry without spilling a drop. The victory, the clean, righteous victory, lasted for 5 hours. Then my personal phone, the one Marco had called before, vibrated on the table. It was a video message. My blood did not just run cold, it stopped. I opened the file. It was my mother. She was not in her heated, comfortable chair at the dialysis clinic. She was in a dark, concrete room, her face pale, her eyes wide with a terror that ripped my soul apart. She was still connected to a portable dialysis machine, but it was old, and the fluid bag next to it looked low. Then Marco's voice, a smooth, calm narrative over the image. "The writer, I read your article. It was very impressive. You took away my reputation. You took away my business, so I took what is yours." My knees gave out. I gripped the counter. A new text message appeared beneath the video. "The old shipyard, Pier 7, you know it. 2 hours. You come alone. You bring the accountant. Elena, you come. Your mother lives. You bring him." A new video file, a close-up of the dialysis tube, a hand holding a syringe, injecting a dark substance into the line. "She dies, slowly." "Ava." Luca was at my side, his hand on my arm. He had seen the screen. His face was no longer filled with awe. It was a mask of cold, absolute fury. What did he say? He has my mother," I whispered. I could not breathe. "He has my mother. He wants me. He wants Elena." "It is a trap." "Ava," he roared, grabbing his own phone. "He will kill you all. He does not care about your mother. He wants to wipe the board." He said alone. "Luca," I was screaming now, grabbing his coat. "He will kill her. This is your world. This is what your world does. It takes mothers. I will not let you go. You cannot stop me." He stopped, his eyes blazing into mine. He saw the truth. I would walk into hell for her. He let go of my arm, his face rigid. "Okay," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Okay, we do it. But we do it my way. You need to keep him talking. You are a linguist. Stall him. He is arrogant. That is his weakness. He will want to gloat, I was already moving. I had to record him. The blood dossier was the setup. This was the spike. Nico was there, his arm in a complex black sling, his face etched with pain but his eyes clear. He held out a small, flesh-colored patch. "Biometric microphone," he said. "Sticks to your throat, under your jaw. They will pat you down. They will not find it. It transmits everything. We will be close. Just keep him talking. Ava, keep him alive until we get there." I looked at Luca. He said alone, "He will see you." "You will be alone on that pier," Luca said, his voice raw. "I give you my word, but we will be in the water." The derelict pier was a skeleton in the moonlight. The wind was a low moan, carrying the smell of salt and decay. I could see them. Marco standing near the edge, 3 of his men, and my mother, tied to a chair, the portable dialysis machine humming beside her, a grotesque parody of her treatment. "Ava," Marco called out, his arms spread wide, a king welcoming a subject. "You came, I am touched. Where is the bitch? Elena." "She is not coming," I said, my voice shaking, the tiny microphone on my throat feeling like a boulder. "The trade was for me. I am here. Let my mother go." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "You think you make the rules here, you. You are the blood bag. That is all you have ever been." His men grabbed me. They searched me. Rough, impersonal hands. They did not find the microphone. He likes your blood so much," Marco mused, walking around me. "He likes your clever words. I think I will take both." He pulled out a full transfusion kit, a gift to complete the circle, my blood brother's life, from you to me. He was going to drain me, right here. He shoved a stack of papers into my chest. "My new contracts, a retraction of your story. You are going to sign them. You are going to become my new, clean voice." He kicked the back of my knees. I fell to the rotting wood planks. "Kneel," he commanded. He prepared the needle. My mother was crying softly. "Ava, baby, do not—" "It is okay, Mom," I said, my voice loud, for her, for the microphone. I looked at the papers. I had to stall. "This contract, I cannot sign what I have not read. It is bad business." Marco sneered. "Read, then, little linguist. Read your confession." I picked up the first page. My heart was a hammer. I began to read. Section 1. I, Ava Morales, hereby state that the blood dossier was a complete fabrication. I paused. "A fabrication you ordered me to create, to frame Luca Vitale." Marco's face darkened. "That is not what it says. Read the words." "I am," I said, my voice rising, clear and steady. "It says right here, under the direct command of Marco De Laurentiis, in his capacity as the new head of the Gulf Syndicate's East Coast operation." "You lying bitch!" he roared, and he slapped me hard. The taste of my own blood filled my mouth. "Now!" The word was not from me. It was from Luca. It came from the darkness, from the water. The pier exploded. It was not a shootout. It was an assault. 4 men, black-clad, rose from the dark water like vengeful spirits. Muffled reports. 2 of Marco's men were down before they even raised their weapons. I saw Nico, his good arm holding a pistol, moving with a precise, pained grace. And someone else. Elena, she had come, she ran, not to me, but to my mother, a knife in her hand, slashing the ropes. "I promised," she screamed, not at me, at the world. It was over in seconds. Brutal, close. Luca was not holding a gun. He was moving toward Marco. This was not business. This was judgment. He disarmed Marco with a single, brutal twist of his arm. He slammed him against a concrete pylon. His hands, both of them, went around Marco's throat. He lifted him from his feet. Marco's face was turning a deep, dark purple. His feet kicked uselessly. Luca was going to kill him. The old way, the only way he knew. My mother was behind me, Elena holding her up. She was watching. "Luca," I screamed. My voice was a shredded wreck. "No, do not become him." "He took her," Luca roared back. His face a mask of fury I had never seen, not even in the fire. "Life is not a pawn," I cried. "You told me you would change the rules. Do not become him. Look at her. Look at my mother. Swear to her, right now, that you will destroy this blood trade, that you will not just take his place. Swear it." His grip tightened. His whole body was shaking with the effort of holding back a lifetime of violence. He looked at Marco's dying face. He looked at me, and then his eyes found my mother's, her terrified, pleading gaze. He dropped him. Marco fell to the pier, a gasping, choking heap. He saw his gun. It was 2 feet away. He lunged for it. Luca just watched him. "It is over, Marco." "It's never over," Marco shrieked. He got the gun, but he did not aim at Luca. He did not aim at me. He aimed at a large, rusted crane platform above our heads, at a cluster of old fuel drums. "If I cannot have this pier, no one will." He fired. The bullets sparked on the metal, but he was on a rotting, unstable pier. He was scrambling backward, trying to get a better angle, trying to bring the whole thing down on us. His foot slipped on the wet, mossy steel. He grabbed for a railing, but it was just rust. It crumbled in his hand. He teetered for one long, impossible second. Then he fell, backward, into the black, churning water. There was a single distant splash, then silence. He was gone. An accident. Gravity, the weight of his own hate pulling him down. The microphone on my throat was still on. It had recorded everything. Marco's threats, my embedded confession, his final desperate scream. It was enough. The Gulf Syndicate's leadership on the East Coast was imploding. I looked at Luca. He was breathing heavily, his hands still clenched. He had not killed him. He had chosen. He had listened. I ran to my mother, holding her, my own blood on my lips. I looked back at Luca Vitale, the man who had just passed judgment by not passing it. I realized in that cold, wet silence that I had changed his world. The family had just seen their leader, their boss, choose mercy over vengeance. He had done it at the word of an outsider. He had done it in front of my mother. The rules were not just changed. They were broken. We did not wait for the police. Luca's men, the ones who had emerged from the water, were efficient ghosts. They secured my mother, wrapped her in thermal blankets, and got her into a warm, waiting vehicle. Elena went with them, her face pale. Her promise kept, she was handed off to a federal contact Ben Carter had arranged, disappearing into the protective custody she had earned. She was a victim, a traitor, and in the end, a savior. I rode with my mother to a private clinic high on a hill, a place I never could have afforded. Luca followed in a separate car. The entire ride, I just held her hand, my own blood, still sticky on my lips. She did not ask me what had happened. She just held on. as if I were the one who had been rescued. We saw Nico the next day. He was in a hospital room that looked more like a hotel suite. His arm and shoulder were immobilized, held together by titanium and surgical steel. He was pale, but his eyes were the same, calm, steady, loyal. "You look terrible," he said to Luca. "You look worse." Luca replied. There was no sentimentality, but the air in the room was thick with it. The price of loyalty was steep. Nico would carry that scar, a visible reminder of the night Luca chose to change the rules for the rest of his life. Ben Carter's follow-up story, fueled by the crystal-clear audio from my biometric microphone, was a masterpiece. It was not just an exposé, it was an indictment. Marco's final, desperate confession, my forced reading of the fraudulent contracts, his admission of controlling the Gulf Syndicate's pipeline. It was all there. The federal task force, which had been spinning its wheels, now had a direct target. They did not just investigate. They decapitated the Gulf Syndicate's entire East Coast operation. It was messy. Some of Luca's organization got swept up in the net. Rossi, the port captain, was indicted. Several others, men who had been loyal to Marco, were arrested. Luca had known this would happen. It was the cost of cleaning house. It was a controlled burn. The illegal biomedical pipeline, the blood money artery, was severed. It was cut. And just as quietly, an anonymous donation, massive in scale, was made to the public hospital's renal care unit. It was enough to fund their operations for 3 years, with a specific earmark for uninsured patients. The benefactor was untraceable, but I knew who had signed the check. The real change, however, was not happening in the newspapers. It was happening inside Luca's own organization. He called a meeting. His remaining captains, the ones who had survived the purge, were summoned to a secure conference room. They were older men, their faces hard, their suits immaculate. They looked at me, sitting at the head of the table next to Luca, with open suspicion. "It is over," Luca said, his voice quiet. He did not need to shout. "Marco is gone. The old contracts are gone. The shell companies are being dissolved." A murmur went through the room. This was not just a change. This was an abdication. "We're restructuring," Luca continued. "Vitali Logistics is now 100% legitimate. The port, the trucks, the shipping. It will all be clean. It will all be on the books. The biomedical division is closed. Permanently." One of the captains, an older man named Sal, leaned forward. "Luca, you are talking about 30% of our revenue. You cannot just walk away. The families that do not like this," Luca said, his voice flat, "can leave. This is the new way. There is no discussion." Then he looked at me. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but I held the papers steady. I had written them myself. "As part of the new structure," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the tense silence, "Vitali Logistics will be adopting a new code of conduct, a compliance mandate." I passed the documents down the table. They were thick. "What is this?" Sal asked, his voice laced with contempt as he read the cover page. "A humanitarian code." "It is," I said. "It outlines our new policy. Zero tolerance for trafficking. Zero tolerance for exploitation. All contracts will be vetted for ethical sourcing. We will not do business with any entity, private or government, that does not meet these standards." The men looked at Luca, expecting him to laugh. He did not. "She wrote it," Luca said. "She will enforce it. If you stay, you sign. If you sign, you are bound by it. If you break it, you answer to her. And if you answer to her, you answer to me. Those of you who do not wish to sign, your severance will be generous. You have until noon. He was burning his old world down, and he was handing me the torch. I could not go back to my old apartment. The media firestorm, even with Marco gone, had made my face recognizable. I was the Mafia mistress, the woman who brought down the syndicate. My old life was gone. My work at the Public Institute, my lectures, they were memories. I was living in the glass tower, a prisoner of my own choices. I would stand by the window, looking down at the city, at the lights, and I would feel the strange, phantom pull, the blood bond. I had given him my blood. I had saved his life, and in doing so, had he not, in some way, taken ownership of mine, I felt possessed, my principles, my independence. They were all compromised. I had saved my mother, but I had lost myself. Luca found me there, late one night. I was not crying. I was just empty. "You are not a prisoner, Ava," he said, his voice soft. He stood next to me, but he did not touch me. "Am I not?" I asked, my reflection staring back at me from the dark glass. "I cannot go home. I cannot work. My name is poison. I am bound to you. Luca, by blood, by everything I did, by everything you did for my mother. What choice did I ever have?" He was silent for a long time, watching the distant headlights cross the bridge. "You have a choice now," he said. He laid it out for me, the old way and the new one. "You can leave," he said, his voice steady. "I will give you a new name, a new life, anywhere in the world you want to go. London, Rome, Sydney. You will have enough money to never work again, to care for your mother for the rest of her life. I will have my people watch from a distance. You will be completely safe. You will be free, and you will never have to see me again." It was everything I thought I wanted. Freedom, safety. "Or," he said, and he turned, his dark eyes finally meeting mine. "You stay, but not like this, not as someone I protect. You stay as my partner, the one I just announced to my captains. You stay, and you enforce those rules. You stay, and you build that patient fund. You stay, and you help me burn the rest of this old world down. You wanted to change the rules. Ava, you cannot do that from London." He was offering me my old life, or a new one I had never imagined, a life of power, of risk, of moral compromise, a life at his side. I looked at him, the man I had saved, the man who had shown me a violence I never knew existed, and a tenderness that had saved my mother. "I stay," I said. My voice was a whisper, but it was the strongest word I had ever spoken. "But I have conditions." He nodded, as if he expected nothing less. "Not just a code," I said, my strength returning. "A compliance unit, and I lead it. I have full access to every account, every shipping manifest, every meeting. Total financial transparency." "Done," he said. "The patient fund. It is not just a donation. It is a foundation. 10% of all net profits, every quarter, permanently." "Done?" And the violence," I said, my voice hardening. "It stops. No more preemptive strikes. No more cleaning house. You defend. You do not assault. You will only use force when there is no other choice. And I will be the one who determines when there is no other choice." This was the last, the hardest condition. I was asking him to put down the sword he had lived by. He looked at me, his face unreadable. I saw the struggle, the conflict between the man he was and the man I was forcing him to become. "Ah, I agree," he said. "Eva Morales will be the conscience of this family. God help us all." Weeks later, the city was thawing. Spring was pushing its way through the grime. My mother was settled in a new apartment, a safe one, with a private nurse. I walked out of the glass tower. I did not take a car. I walked for 30 blocks, all the way back to the harbor district. I walked into the public hospital, past the emergency bay where it had all started. I went up to the blood clinic. The same nurse was there. She looked up, surprised to see me. "Miss Morales, we thought you had moved away." "I am still here," I said. I sat in the chair. I rolled up my sleeve. I made a fist. "Just a standard donation," I said. As she prepped my arm, the needle bit deep, the familiar, clean sting. I watched my blood, dark and rich, fill the bag. It was not for an emergency. It was not for a dying man in a burning car. It was not a bond. It was not a contract. It was mine, and I was giving it by choice. The ceremony was held in the new atrium of the public hospital, the same one I had run from on the night of the crash. The room was bright, filled with sunlight, smelling of fresh paint and new beginnings. It was the launch of the Vita Fund, my idea, Luca's money. I stood at the podium. I could see the flash of cameras, the skeptical faces of the press, the hopeful faces of the hospital administrators. I saw my mother in the front row, her face glowing with a health I had not seen in a decade. I saw Nico standing against the back wall, his arm in a stylish sling, the steel beneath his suit a permanent part of him now. And I saw Luca. He was not at the front. He was standing near the exit, wearing a simple suit, his hands clasped behind his back. He was just a man in the crowd, a benefactor, not a boss. He was seating the stage. He was seating the power. "We call it the Vita Fund," I said, my voice clear and strong, amplified by the microphone. Vita, life, because this is not just about charity. It is about a systemic commitment to life. It is about ensuring that the quality of your care is never determined by the balance of your bank account. I laid out the terms. The 10% mandatory contribution from Vitali Logistics, the new compliance division I was heading, the commitment to ethical sourcing and protecting the vulnerable, not exploiting them. I was using the language of corporate responsibility to describe a revolution. I was laundering his empire, not his money. When I finished, there was a moment of silence, then applause. It was real. I had taken their whispers and turned them into a promise. Luca caught my eye from across the room. He did not smile. He just nodded. Once. It was enough. That night, we stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the glass tower. The city was a carpet of diamonds below us. It was the first time we were truly alone, without a crisis, without a threat, since this had begun. "You were good," he said, his voice a low rumble. I told the truth. I replied. He turned to me, the city lights carving shadows on his face. The burns on his jaw had healed into faint, silver lines. "You have changed everything, Eva. You took my world, and you broke it, and you built something new." "We built it," I said. "You had to choose to let it break." He moved closer. He did not touch me. Not yet. I do not know this man, the one who signs checks and listens to compliance reports. "I do," I said. "He is the man who kept his promise to my mother. He is the man who let Marco fall." He finally reached out, his hand gently tracing the line of my jaw. His touch was not possessive, as it had been. It was hesitant. It was a question. I am not a good man, Ava. I am not asking you to be, I whispered, leaning into his touch. I am asking you to be a kind one, and kindness is not a beautiful story. Luca, it is not a feeling. It is a chain of decisions. It is a choice you have to make every single day, over and over, when it is hard, when it is ugly, when you want to choose the old way. And if I choose wrong, he asked, his voice raw, then I will be there to remind you, I said. He kissed me then. It was not the desperate, frantic kiss of a romance novel. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was the sealing of a contract, a vow made of shared trauma and cautious hope. We did not promise each other forever. We just promised to choose each other and to choose the right path. Every morning that we woke up, my life found a new rhythm. I was Ava Morales, Executive Director of the Vita Fund and Head of Ethical Compliance for Vitala Logistics, but I was also just Ava, forensic linguist. I set up my own shop, funded by the new legitimate profits of Luca's company. I did not just vet his contracts. I began to hunt. I worked with international health organizations, with human rights groups. I used my skills to find the evil language hidden in procurement contracts from all over the world. I found the shell companies funneling expired medicine to developing nations. I found the labor brokers hiding human trafficking in the fine print of hospital cleaning crew agreements. I was doing my old job, but now I had power. I had Luca's resources. When I found a monster, I did not just write a report. I passed the file to a man who knew how to make monsters disappear. One afternoon, I was visiting my mother in her new apartment. It was bright, filled with plants, and it did not smell of sickness. We were having tea. She was happy. She was off the transplant list, her health stabilized by consistent, state-of-the-art care. She had never, not once, asked me about that night on the pier. She had never asked me about Luca, though she knew he was the one paying for all of this. You seem good, Mija, she said, her hand over mine. I am good, Mom, I said. I am happy. She smiled, a small, knowing smile. I was so afraid that night at the clinic. I was so afraid of him, of that man. My heart tightened. Mom? No, she said, squeezing my hand. I was afraid of him. For you, I saw a dangerous man, a man who lived by violence. She looked at me, her dark eyes so clear. But I was wrong. I was not wrong about him. I was wrong about you. You faced him. You did not run. You did not break. You took all that power, all that darkness, and you made it look at the light. You turned a dangerous man into one who dares to be kind. I am so proud of you, Ava. I cried then. I let go of all the tension, all the fear, all the moral weight. She just held me. The new life was not a fairy tale. It was real, and the real world always has shadows. I was in my office a few weeks later, tracing a complex shipment of pharmaceuticals that seemed to be disappearing between Zurich and Singapore. My secure phone, the one Nico had given me, buzzed. It was a message from an encrypted, untraceable number. It was not from Luca. It was not from Nico. I opened it. The message was simple. 5 words. Your language has reached places. It was a fragment, a piece of a sentence. It was not a threat, not exactly, but it was a signal. The Gulf Syndicate was broken, but the world was wide. My work, my linguistic fingerprints, were now on a global stage. I had been noticed. A year ago, a message like that would have sent me into a blind panic. I would have run. I would have hidden. I just stared at it. I felt the cold, familiar thrill of the hunt. I felt the risk. But I did not feel fear. I stood up and walked to the window. My office overlooked the harbor. I could see the pier, the place where Marco had fallen, the place where Luca had chosen. I was not afraid. I closed the message. I knew they were out there. I knew there would be another fight, another contract, another shadow. But I was not going to face it alone. The sun was coming up over the Delaware River. The cold Philadelphia winter had finally broken, giving way to a warm, promising spring. I felt a hand slide into mine. I did not have to look. I knew his touch. Luca stood beside me. He said nothing. We just watched the dawn. I looked down at our joined hands. I saw the faint, pale network of scars on the inside of his wrist, where the fire and the IV lines had marked him, and I saw the small, faint dots on the inside of my own arm, the marks of a lifetime of donations, the blood that had been a bond, a chain of possession, was now something else. It was a vow, a scar we shared. We had saved each other, and now we would save others, together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious, where in the world are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments so we can share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And please, support us by hitting that hype button, so this story can be heard by even more people.